So what are those boundaries that people should set?
So first off, when you're taking a client, the first boundary you want to do is make sure they're actual who they are and they're qualified. Mm-hmm. So I know that's a boundary which we don't think about. We think about physical, and like, so for example, like Ariana had somebody which we're talking, she was sending red flags to me. I'm like, be careful. And I explained her my red flags. So she kept giving her this potential tenant, and we found out afterwards she was.
Hello and welcome back to the DC Talks podcast. I'm your co-host, Agent O, Onosende, with the main man himself, David Chinelli, my guy.
Yeah, I'm never calling you that.
just bro, can you just do me a solid and call me?
Is that our shtick nowadays? You just doing that? And I'm saying I'm not calling out.
Yeah, just do me a solid, bro.
All right. What's up, Agent O?
Agent O, you know. I should be wearing all black every time we're recording, man. Just little agent outfit.
You look good in yellow.
You know, yellow is my favorite color, by the way.
Yeah, because you're full of sunshine.
Full of sunshine, full of positivity, very mellow. So, but we can speak about colors, man. But you know what? It's been on my mind. We talk a lot about starting businesses, David. But a lot of people don't talk about the other side of what not to do when starting a business.
Yeah.
You know, we're always like trying to say, start a business, financial freedom, free time. You know, in last week's podcast, we're talking about, you leaving your treasury role to start your own firm.
Let's be honest, that's getting fired from my treasury role.
Getting fired. But
I had opportunities to get back into it and I didn't want to. Yeah.
Exactly. And you start your own thing. You're going independent, right? And everybody talks about, go start a business, whether that's like an e-commerce or starting a real estate or whatever it is. But we don't ever talk about or make it prevalent on what not to do about when not to start a business. So I wanted to get your insights on what not to do when starting a business, especially in real estate, because you're established now. And, your words of caution of like what not to do in general in this field. And also for anybody out there who might not be doing real estate, because we have people who listen to the show who are not going to be agents, but they're going to be starting a business at some capacity.
And we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Right. Shout out to all of you.
Yeah.
So first things first, we're going to talk about like when you're starting a business, you need a structure first. And I know in the previous episode, you spoke about with Nursh having an assistant, right? Which kind of led him to actually, do it day one. But I want to talk about personnel. How do you like personally, like you have a great team. You have a lot of people here in the office who are like helping bring the DC firm together.
Yeah. 2 of them are right behind me right now.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
How do you identify talent? Like what's your secret of identifying talent?
I don't know if there's a secret. You got to get a good feeling about somebody. So, you can look at everybody's resumes, or I guess in the US, they call them CVs and stuff too. And you're trying to figure out what stands out. So for me, what stands out is somebody who's not just, book oriented. You can do a lot of things in school, and if you're constantly just kind of going to school and not working, like the working aspect is a big thing too. But I like people that make their resumes look different. There's some things that'll stand out to you. Like, what have you done? Some extracurriculars, like, my assistant Elise, hopefully she doesn't mind me talking about her. I like the fact she was like, in nursing school. So it was something different, it was like, oh, okay. So and to me, it was like, is that something that she cares about other people? She did it for school. It was intriguing enough to have that conversation. So that's what I was kind of looking for. Something it's like, I had all about, I think 30 or something resumes when I hired her. And a lot of them were just like, well, I kind of like it was just plain vanilla, like resumes. And it was just like, I like real estate, want to get into real estate. And I'm like, there was no personality there. And for me, personalities and how they mesh matter. So it's kind of like you want to show you're writing something, but you want to see a personality come through when you're doing that. And that's how I kind of, we're working through that kind of.
I'm curious, right? So let's say you get all these resumes and you see someone who has amazing achievements. They've worked in many different spaces and everything. And you can say they're overqualified.
You can say that. But no.
You can say that, right? But on paper, they're like, why are you doing this? Would you move forward with that application, or would you just be like, I don't know, this doesn't
that is a prime example why you want to have a conversation, right? It's the same thing we talked about before, like when you're interviewing with me and you want to, and the first thing you say is, well, you want to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's what is your motivation? What's driving you? Like, you've achieved all these things. Well, why is that? Which is great. I would never say no to an overachiever. Like, I remember when I had my MBA, and I was starting out. I didn't have a real big boy job, you know. I hadn't had one like a corporate world. And I was getting turned down from people when I was putting the resume, and they were saying, you're overqualified. I'm like, well, why? I'm like, well, you're going to want too much money for this position. I'm like, well, no, what it was showing me, I thought it was showing them is I had the initiative to go out and did like got more schooling because I wanted to have more knowledge and I wanted to learn. And that's just show you something about myself that any role I get into, I want to work hard, right? That's how I kind of look at it that way of overachieving. Great. But that also deems that like why we have a deeper conversation. Well, why are you doing all these things? Why are you like, even if you're hopping from job to job, you don't want to like, that's also a red flag. You might not want to job too many jobs, but yeah, like that's kind of what you want to do, deeper conversation. Now there are realtors out there that tried before and they've been like 3 or 4 brokerages and you're like, and when you have conversations with them, like this is the other side of the story. It's like, well, they're expecting the brokerages to do all this stuff. And we're like, well, maybe it's not the brokerages that's the problem. You may want to look inward. And like you see these realtors, like there's one guy in our office. I think he's come back to us like 3, 4 times. He's been in like 5 or 6 offices since I've been a realtor. I've been a realtor for almost 8 years. He's been in 5 or 6 offices and he's back with us. And he's like, oh, Royal Page signature is the best. We're like, then why do you keep leaving thinking it's something else? I'm like, there's something innately wrong with you. And that, not wrong with you, but you're looking for something. And it's just, at some point, you just gotta, you know, hunker down. And, you know what I mean? Like, so you want to weed that out as well. So there's, I would never say no to somebody who's quote unquote overqualified. I like skill set. I want to know why you did that, right? It shouldn't be a negative when you want to do more stuff.
Yeah, I mean, when I started hearing about overqualified was like when we first immigrated to Canada, and when my dad is like really educated, he's done certifications, he has his degrees in finance and everything, and he just wanted to get his foot in the door. He wanted to get in like a firm just to get, was they say, Canadian experience. That's the thing he kept hearing. So whenever he was applying for roles, God, like, you're too overqualified. You're too, like, what do you mean? Like, don't you want the best people in the job to, like, for your business? And I don't understand that. It's like people would rather have someone who is less qualified so they can pay them less.
Or fulfills a criteria.
The States
is bad for that too.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Right. Yeah. So, when we're getting into that side of the personnel side, like, because your business is very unique. It's like you have Royal Page signature, but we're here in your office. We have like, you have your assistants and everything like this. How does one agent come to this point, like where you actually have your own office? When do you know it's the time to actually establish like your own space and building your business like that?
Everybody's different, you know, so I guess a lot of it depends on your trajectory. Now, I've said this before, having an assistant is huge. It'll propel your business because there's 2 of you working on what you were doing by yourself. Now, if you're banging out maybe 5 or 6 deals a year, do you need an assistant? No, probably not. Like, you can do all this stuff on your own, but you don't want to miss out on opportunities when you start getting really busy. And I felt that too. Like, I couldn't be, when I felt the part where I was like, I couldn't split myself couldn't split myself into 2. And I was hating doing, or I was missing things on paperwork and getting sloppy. And that's kind of like I needed to focus more on the relationship aspect. And I had hired a company, a Canadian company, which did virtual assistants to see if this is something that could help me. And the reason why I chose the virtual assistants were they're Canadian. Like they're most of them are wives of RCMP cops. That, you know, because they travel and stuff too, they can do everything virtually, and they're mostly taking care of the kids and stuff. And like, I thought it was great. I'd like, okay, give back a Canadian company. There's no, you know, unfortunately, some of these virtual assistants have language barriers and different time zones. Whereas here they're in the East Coast. There's only about an hour and a half difference. It wasn't too bad. But the other thing I really liked is that they had was that they gave me a manual. So everything, all the processes of which they were doing, they created a manual for us. So they knew eventually once we outgrew them, they would give me this, you know, one was an Excel sheet and it was in a Word document that I can pass on to a physical assistant. And that's exactly what happened. Like, you just kind of outgrew them too. And now one of my virtual assistants is killing it. She's an amazing realtor. Yeah, she's just awesome in the East Coast. So she's just, Katie, she's messaged me. She was, when do I be on your podcast? I'm like, when do you come to Toronto? It's like, her story is amazing. So so I feel like if you're starting to, the first step is when you're starting to feel like you're missing things or you're missing opportunities, you need that second hand. You know, you can even hire a virtual assistant in the meantime, because, you know, they're not expensive. You know, They're not cheap, but they're not expensive, but they're worth their weight in gold. And at that point too, then if you felt you're outgrowing them, you can move to somebody physical. My office, the reason why I've had my office here is, I live in Etobicoke. And my office, we have 3 offices, Royal LePage Signature. I go to the Mississauga office basically because it's only about 15 minutes from my house. But they have parking. There's free parking. And I don't go to the office very often. I was mostly working from my home. But I needed that separation, which I can come to the office and just do my own thing.
Separate like family life to business life.
Well, even everything. Because I had an office where I can close the doors, and once you open the doors, office begins. Also, the wife liked that I could close the doors, that it wasn't messy in front of everybody, because that's just the way my brain sometimes works. Sometimes I'll have like stacks of papers and stuff there. For me, it's organized mess. I'm a lot less messy here in the office for some strange reason, but in my own office, it was like, and things were starting to spill out into the
living room,
into the dining room, on our other tables, and we were both looking for. My wife and I were probably going to buy space in which we were going to share. And so I approached Royal LePage. I said, hey, can I have a satellite office where I can just, do my day-to-day here? And they allowed me to do that. And so for me, the separation, church and state, I guess you can call it, was huge, because even though I don't live that far from my office, I know as soon as it's all here, it's all business. I can get a lot more done when there's no distractions here in the office. And I thought that also propelled my business as well.
So that's something interesting, that you had to ask for permission to Royal LePage.
Yep.
Why do you have to ask for permission when you're essentially independently trying to generate your own business?
It's because of where their office is. So there's, with Royal LePage, and the different offices have, different brands have different categories or like areas in which you can put your office. So they don't want some offices like Remax. You can have Remax beside a Remax. They don't care. It's kind of like a Starbucks. You've been to New York City back in maybe 20 years ago. I remember walking at a building, and on corners, at each corner, there was 2 different Starbucks, and they didn't care. They just wanted to overpopulate. Well, Royal LePage is not like that. There is a certain radius in which you can have offices. So they had to ask permission. So since here it was far enough away from the other offices, they allowed me to have it. So that's why we had to ask permission and to run the satellite through here.
Getting out of the nitty gritty stuff of actually what not to do about starting the business, there's actually a big part of it is mental, right? And what I notice is a lot of people, they try to over perfect every single thing. There's this idea of analysis paralysis where you're overlooking everything. You're trying to you know what? That pamphlet
trying to be perfect,
right? Oh, that pamphlet does not look good enough. That
Oh, my business cards aren't ready.
Yeah,
they don't have the right name. My photo doesn't look great. Like I had a coach in the beginning. He was just like, I don't care what you have, just go. It's better to go out there and figure out and then work as it's word. Like get out there and do the practice. So like there are certain things you need to have in a business, especially as a realtor beforehand. Like, you got to know what to say. You got to know basically the business, like you want to know what's happening in the market. You don't want to just do your own research, but that doesn't take days and stuff too. Like that can take a good, morning of reading about what's happening in the market, keeping up there. Yeah. Like the business card was a big thing. A lot of people are using that as an excuse not to go door knocking.
To actually go do the work.
Yeah. Like put your name on a letterhead, print out some pages and go. Like
it's on Canva, make something happen.
Oh, my website's not ready.
Yeah. As if you're going to get like a rush of traffic day one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if I said to you, Owen, I'm like, hey, I knocked on your door and I said, hey, Owen, I'm David Chinelli. I'm a realtor with Royal LePage. And I said, Craig, there's some way I can contact you. I'm like, well, here's my phone number. Here's my email address. Do you have a website? I'm like, you know what? It's in transition. When it's ready, I'll let you know. Is that okay with you? Are you going to say no to me because my website's in transition? No. But people, I find there's, especially people in the business, they're scared. So they use excuses. No. When I said door knocking, I think we talked about this before. Every single time I went to the first door, I hated it. Like every morning I try to do my sales calls. Some weeks are better than others. My first phone call, I still hate it. You just because you just kind of get into the rhythm.
It's a rusty or a little bit
Yeah. I actually don't mind it as much now because we're calling people and I'm not cold calling as much as I used to.
There's familiarity there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people prefer cold calling over calling their database, like people they know, like, and trust. But because they can just well, if I screw up, nobody knows, but at least they're doing it. Right. Yeah. But I've heard there's so many people in our office that are like, yeah, I know I have, and they do they studied all the courses. They know all the scripts. They know all the area. And I'm like, okay, great. So how many leads do you have? How many people have you talked
How
to?
much pipeline do you have?
And they're like, well, I'm still waiting. And a year later, they're still waiting.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like that happens. And that happens with every business.
Mm-hmm. So can over perfection be a form of procrastination?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's better to, like I was saying with the videos, I said, it's much better to throw something, put more content in it so it doesn't look perfect. It's something out there than nothing at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know,
I'm also the same way too, man. It's like build it as you're flying it, right? Yeah. So I have a couple of friends I went to school with. We're trying to formulate a group together, like where we would be pulling money together to invest and actually create something. Mm-hmm. And we were like over analyzing like the systems we were using. We're like, okay, we can't really do anything until we have this Excel file properly loaded, or we have this Notion system. I'm like, bro, we've been at this for 4 months and we haven't even done anything. Right. So
now if your business is an online business and you can only get sales through online, like, then obviously make sure that's up and running, but you can do that in a day. I guess some of these smaller ones that shouldn't be holding you back. Like it won't be perfect, but get something in place that's, manageable in the meantime.
Yeah, man. Like it's more about this idea of the launch, right? I've always really hated it in a sense of everything has to be perfect until we launch it. I'm like, no, it doesn't. Just go out there, because when you look at Facebook in day one, do you remember how it really, really looked in day one when they launched it compared to now?
Yeah, it's terrible.
It was terrible, right? But no one ever thinks about those first days when you launch a business, right? So when you really overextend yourself into waiting to launch, it's really just delaying the process of actually going out there and getting the results, which I find a lot of people like waste time doing as a way of just trying to look cool or trying to look at the frills of
any brand. Like look at Nike's original brand. You see that was like a treat or something. It was something crazy.
It was insane.
It was insane. Then you see the progression thing. You're allowed to change. like no one says you have to stay the same, right? Like it's obviously when you solidify, when you're a big player in somebody's mind at that point, then it gets harder to change. But yeah, I get it. Like Coca-Cola, when they tried to change from their to the new taste, they try to get rid of the Coca Classic, and I'm like, okay, well then you're changing the whole brand. Okay, then it's a little bit, but you've already established hundreds of years or whatever it was at that point. I get that. You're not that person. You're not Coca-Cola.
You're not Coca-Cola, bro.
Coca-Cola.
You're just Joe Schmo, look like building from day one until I always say it takes about like 5 years to build a brand, right? In our history, like doing the podcast and everything, we're still making the climb, right? A lot of people like can realize, okay, DC, the more people see you, they know DC, they know David Chinelli, right? But it doesn't happen like immediately in the first day of a brand being established.
Well, the other thing is when you start to establish a brand, because I'm still working on it too. The thing is you can't do is stop working within your business. Like that's the hardest part. Like people make a couple of dollars. I see realtors do this all the time. They'll have a good year and they'll have 3 shitty years. They'll take the foot off the gas, right? Or they'll have a great quarter and then not prospect. And then like all of a sudden like, oh my God, I have to hustle again. Like it's a cyclical cycle. Like for your business to be, I don't care what business, you constantly have to be working in your business and on your business. So you should be like have several different hats while you're doing this, right? Like as an entrepreneur, you need to be able to, work as an employee in your business. Then you have to be like the managerial or work on the business, and then, figuring things out. There's different hats, and they also have to be doing advertising. That's one thing that people don't tell you when you're starting a brand new business is that you need to advertise and sell yourself.
Okay.
Right? Sell yourself. Figure out what people need, and then you have to show them that you can fill the gap in which they need. But you may have the best service, the best brand, you can have everything. But if you're not showing that to people, it doesn't matter, right? Like literally, a lot of it has to do with advertising. Like you go back to the old campaign. This may age me, but back in the day when videos came out, there was VHS and beta. Right? Do you know what either one of those are?
No.
Okay. Well,
I know VHS.
Yeah, but nobody knows beta. So beta was actually a superior product, and it was a smaller cassette, but it was superior. But VHS went all in, did the advertising, they pushed. and they won. Same thing happened when I think it was Laserdisc and Blu-ray, right? Blu-ray, that was pretty much comparable, I guess, because the Blu-ray, they were supposed to be above what the regular television was. But Blu-ray spent way more money on advertising and pushing and figuring out the channels. So they show the gap and they advertise where they need to. They went to the people that needed it, and that's how they got ahead. So in both those situations, like, was it a superior product? No, that made it ahead. Not necessarily. Same thing with whether you're starting a business or you're a realtor. It's like, you have to advertise for yourself. You have to push. If you sit at home and expect people to call you just because you put a couple of Facebook ads out there, good luck.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not going to, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And you're someone who is out there, like more than most agents. Are there things that you've realized, even though you're
crazy? Because I'm a little crazy too.
I mean, that's what Steve Jobs say. The crazy ones are the ones who actually end up winning, like, because they're actually so out there that they dare to do it, that they look crazy, but at the end of the day, they get results.
Oh, people laugh at me for the shit I do all the time.
Yeah.
They think, like, oh, like, I remember I told you before, that when I used to walk in the office, like, oh, here's Mr. Instagram, oh, Mr. Video. I'm like, yeah. Like, I'm okay with that. Make fun of me all you want. And I like, was one guy, I remember, I'm not going to say his name, but I quadrupled what he made in 1 year. And I was only the second, and he was in the business double the amount of time I was in there. And I was like, how are the Instagrams doing now? But I don't do that. I didn't say that physically to him. I thought in my head, I'm like, okay, make fun of me. I'm like, it's great. I don't care. People make, I was talking to my buddy Marco the other day too. And he goes, listen, I have to commend you. He goes, I make fun of you. We all make fun of you and stuff too. I'm like, yeah. He goes, but you're out there, you're trying, you're pushing, we can see that. So like, I don't care. Make fun of me all you want.
Yeah. And in that journey of putting out a lot of content, are there things that you've learned not to do while pumping out so much content?
Yeah. There's certain things. It's like, be authentic. Most of my videos I do, like these as well, like, we're not rehearsing these. I'm not rehearsing a lot of it. Like, when I go to my shorts, I do, like, I have 7 videos a day, which the assistants help me post. I have a general idea of what I'm going to say, but I talk the way I talk. I don't script a lot of what I'm saying. And so it's authentic. In the beginning, I was being more scripted and it came across fake. Like, and you can tell that
you're like rigid.
Yeah. Like, and you're forcing it. Right. So be true to yourself, be true to your values, and push out the content. Don't follow what everybody else is doing. And just because they're doing it, if you like something somebody else is doing, absolutely. There's no harm in copying that, or like, just don't copy them word for word. That's kind of scary. Don't do that. But there's, there's some flattery with that when people copy things that I do. I'm like, that's great, but be authentic and, like, try to just do more content. Get out of your own headspace.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say was, especially when it comes to video and pictures, people don't like the way they look, sound. On camera. I still don't like the way. I don't watch a lot of my videos and stuff. I don't watch a lot of the stuff. I record it. If I like what I say, I pass it on. I'm like, I don't like watching myself.
Why is that?
I don't know. I'm always criticizing what I'm saying, what I'm doing. I'm always in my own head. If I continue doing that, I probably won't pump out as much content, because then I'll be more self-conscious of what I'm saying.
Yeah, I see. I want to get to targeting when you're starting a business, especially when it comes to real estate. So when you're starting, and I'm curious too, for new agents out there, let's say the GTA or even outside of the GTA, what is like your restrictions you have when actually starting out as an agent? Let's say you're based in Toronto. Can you go target people in Milton, or can you just,
absolutely,
you can? So there's no,
we can, when you get a license in Ontario, it's an Ontario license. So here in Toronto, it's Ontario. Yeah. So we can practice anywhere within the borders of Ontario.
Okay. So, which leads me to my next thing. So if a business owner, let's say I'm selling bras, or leotards.
Oh, bras,
right? Let's say a young lady starting a business selling bras.
Why did you go there?
I don't know, man. The girls are in the background. I was just like thinking, it was like, okay, what kind of business?
Get your mind out of the gutter, buddy. Okay, sorry. And you're selling bras. Who's selling bras? Okay,
I'm selling them to the girls, man. But I know I'm selling it to the girls. But as an agent, do you have like a demographic? Can you target a demographic? Like, is there a strategic way on going about that?
So first off, like, let's back up a little bit, right?
Yes.
So if I hear one more new agent tell me, oh, they only want to do luxury sales, I don't understand that. Like, I used to tell most agents when it comes to business, especially the first couple of years, do not say no to anything. Say yes to leases, say yes to commercial, say yes and learn. If you don't know, ask me, like, especially like, for example, Julia's working with me and Ariana's working with me. Take the business and if you don't know, ask me questions. If we don't know, there's other people that can help you. It's better to get the business and work through that as opposed to saying no to the business. So do not say no to business. Don't be so focused on, I only want to sell in my area too. Like, you don't know what your demographic or who you resonate with in the beginning. I had no idea that who I was resonating with in the beginning. In the beginning, when I first started, I did really well with first-time home buyers and people in their, basically in their mid-30s, right? Anybody older than 44 at that point, wasn't my demographic. And I didn't choose that demographic. It just was people that resonated with me, because I guess most people over the 44 already had agents or something else. Now I'm getting an older demographic, and then I was still working with all different demographics, and I still do. But it's funny, like when you're out, like you came to my Christmas party, like you see like the demographics, there's predominantly some sort of demographics that fit in. And I didn't choose those people. It just kind of worked out that way. So I would say, that's why I say take it, especially the first couple of years in the business, figure out where you're working well, and then you can start hammering at it. Figure out who you resonate well with. What areas are you mostly working in? Like, why are you working in that? And then if you want to start honing on that, you can. I still don't really just work in a specific area. I still take as much business everywhere. Like, on Sunday, for example, I'm going 2 hours away with my client. She lives here in Toronto, but she's been looking everywhere. She found a piece of land with a house on it. It's right in her price range. It's 26 acres. We're like, sure. So we did some research. I'm like, you sure? If you want to go for this, yeah, let's jump in the car and let's go. Like, I don't say no.
It's like 2 hours there, 2 hours back.
Yeah, it's a 4-hour round trip.
And it might not even go through. The deal might not.
100% it's not going to work. I know it's not going to work.
So why make the trip there if you know?
Because it's my client. Want to make sure that this is something that there might be something along the way that might be close to that. She might like the area when she's up there. So we might travel 4 hours. So 2 hours up along the way. This might not be the house for her. I said, maybe pick some houses along the way. But she wants to feel the area. And it might be something she said, or it might be something just like, hell no, I'm never coming back here. So I'm okay with that, to be honest with you. Like, we're not doing it every weekend. She understands it's a commitment for both. She's very appreciative of that too.
Yeah.
But that's my clients. I love my clients. I treat them like family. Like, listen, if you said to your dad and you're like, your dad would probably say no faster than I would, but because like, oh, you're paying for gas. But you know what I mean? It's, I don't know. For me, I'm like, okay, if you're serious about this, let's go.
Is there a limit for new agents of like the boundaries that they let people cross? For example, you're going 2 hours away, but as a new person, you might feel like I got to do it all. Do you advise on certain boundaries that you've noticed over the years that people should consider before like going full-fledged?
You mean physical barriers
or like requests and all those certain things, because people can take advantage of you, right? So what are those boundaries that people should set? So
first off, when you're taking a client, the first boundary you want to do is make sure they're actual who they are and they're qualified. So I know that's a boundary which we don't think about. We think about physicality. Like, so for example, like Ariana had somebody which we're talking, she was sending red flags to me. I'm like, be careful. And I explained her my red flags. So she kept giving her this potential tenant. And we found out afterwards she was fraudulently doing stuff and like doing documents on her own and end up being right. So there's limits. Like, before you drive out somewhere to figure out who your client is, that's a huge barrier, because they have to be who they say they be. Otherwise you can get in a lot of trouble as well. So that's something yourself. The second thing I would say is be mindful of and respectful of your time and set up barriers that way. Like it's funny, we're going to talk about the podcast in the next couple of sessions. We're going to talk a little bit more into that. And just respecting your own time and space. If you're single and you don't mind taking phone calls at 11 o'clock at night, you don't have to put your kids to bed like I do. Watch my kids go to bed by themselves nowadays. But, or if in the beginning though, if you don't have a family or if you're not there, you want to work 7 days a week, good. Figure out what works for you. But what I would suggest doing is like figure out when you're at your peak, right? Because you can't work 7 days a week, 24/7 for 365 days of the year without burning out. So you need to figure out what works, and everybody's different. You need to know what schedule works out for you. And that's the other thing I was saying. If you're an entrepreneur, you need a schedule. You need a schedule. I don't care what most people like. That includes, some meditation, prayer, some of those intertwined, physical activity, eating healthy, when to go to bed, when to wake up, what you're doing it every single day. Mm-hmm. So you need to have schedule. If there's certain days, certain filmings I do for my pod, like I do at a certain day. Mm-hmm. I don't just record on every single day with a whim. Like, no, there's a structure. I wake up, 6:30 or 6:15 every morning. And then I get up, I'm in the gym before 7:00 because I need to do certain things. And then I can start my day. Your prospecting should happen every single day. So scheduling is a big thing. So that is a big thing you need to do to set boundaries for yourself, respect your own boundaries. There are certain times in which you have a client calls you and says, hey, I want to see a $2 million home, but I only have a 30-minute window. Well, you're going to go to that listing, especially if it's a respected client of yours that they know they're possibly going to buy. Right?
Yeah. And do you have like a level of discernment to realize,
yeah.
And you're like, you know what? Do you say no, even though like it's a $2 million listing, they want to go see it, they have a 30-minute window. And even though they're not going to buy, are there moments where you're like, maybe I should still go because you never know anything?
Yes, to both of those. So I have certain clients, which I know they're not going to buy a property. And I talk about like why. I let them figure out why they're not, and I already know the answer why they're not going to buy it. And sometimes they still want to see it, even though like, we're probably not going to buy this. Can you still show it? Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. We'll still also go because but it does happen. Like, sometimes they'll say, okay, it's listed for 1.99 million. They have an offer day next week, which means, and they were previously listed for $4 million. So the trigger on that is it was previously listed for $4 million. Your budget is 2.5 million. It looks good to you because this 199 is below your budget, but they're having an offers, which means they're listing it low to get a lot of people in. But their ideal sell price is close to 4 million. You can't afford that. Right?
Yeah.
And they said, well, maybe we'll get lucky. Yeah, maybe you will, maybe you won't. Yeah. 99% of the time, even if you give an offer for their top end budget, it's not going to get accepted because you know that. But listen, at the end of the day, I'm like, you want to see it. But we also use that as a learning experience because even some of my veteran clients will go there. I'm like, you never know. Like, sure, we can put an offer in. Like, and I like looking at houses. So especially nice houses,
it makes you dream big.
Yeah, not like that. Sometimes you can throw a little Instagram in there too and say, hey, I'm showing this property today. It was listed for 4 million. You got to be careful with that because you can't advertise for somebody else without another agent's listing without permission. But anyway, so we'll go in there and we'll see. I'm like, okay, this is 199, and we'll make a game out of it. What do you think this is going to sell for? How many offers do you think they're actually going to get? What's a bet? Let's bet $5. I'll bet you a coffee. They'll get 3 offers. I bet you a coffee. It's going to sell for 3.9. I bet you they're not going to accept any offers. Like there's one the other day, one of my clients said, he goes, this is for 2777, right? And I'm like, and I said his name, I'm like, hey, he goes, well, how come they took this off this market? It was suspended after just a week. I'm like, well, if you look at the history, this is what was in my mind. It was listed for 3.99. They canceled that listing and listed for 277. What do you think's happening? It's like, oh, they're doing an offer day. I'm like, that's right. So they either didn't get any offers, or they get no offers that are acceptable to the sellers because it wasn't close to that 4 million, which they were looking for. So yeah, so that one was another. You just got to read between the lines sometimes, and I try to educate my clients sometimes too. Like that's a good thing. Some of these apps, it tells you the history that you say, did you see what this was previously listed for?
Yeah. So one thing I want to ask you, David, is about rushing decisions, and this is something I see a lot of entrepreneurs do because they're so eager to really get out in the market that they over rush everything, that they forget the basics of, you know what, take your time with this decision, because if you over rush it, it might lead to disaster. Are there moments in your business when you started out that you felt like you over rushed something that you ended up regretting?
It's a good question. I find sometimes no, so I wouldn't say over rushing. I find sometimes some people take too long because they make a decision and then you're pushing them. And because sometimes like by not pushing them fast enough, they actually miss the market and believe it's like been a week or two. So I wouldn't say me personally for rushing things too quickly because things weren't ready and all that stuff. Because we talked about okay, I rushed it on the market, but we made changes. So okay, this wasn't ready at the time. So for example, one time I was like, oh shit, the closets were full of all the stuff for the garage. I'm like, okay, let's do the pictures, let's do the video, let's cover that, let's rush on there, and then let's clean it out. And sometimes we had a showing before those were done. So that would have been a situation we kind of rushed it, but we needed to get on the market at a certain time in order to hit the market. So we rushed things. Was it detrimental to the sale? No, not necessarily. But because we calculate things correctly and we're working on it. Earlier in my career, I was a little more laid back about it. It was like, because I was more like scared because you're scared. You don't want to lose the client. You don't want to push them too much. And now, as the more of the authority, I would say it's like, okay, no, we're not doing that. You're putting your foot down, so we're not rushing it anymore. But yeah, in the beginning, sometimes you have to rush it and then learn on the fly. Yeah. So I wouldn't worry so much about the rushing and figuring it and failing a little bit and making mistakes, and then working through that.
Yeah, in the tech space, they say fail fast, meaning like, don't even look at it, don't even think about it. If it seems right, if it feels good, make that decision and actually do it. But there's also like a balance where there's like a method to the madness where you're thinking, man, like, I know there's a decision we're supposed to rush in terms of like naming the company this, or setting up this structure, or going to the market with this product. Like, no, I think you should really, really think about those foundational things. And I feel like a lot of people, the foundational aspects of building their business, they overrush it, which ends up coming to burn them later on. So even as a realtor, which I'm curious to know, is like, those things that people really try and expedite really quick, but the more they stay with that decision, they don't end up doing some recourse on it. Ends up being like something that's going to burn later deals. I don't know what examples those could be.
I don't know, because it doesn't
because it happens in every business.
But the funny thing, so the problem with our businesses as realtors is we don't know the ins and outs of everybody's business. And if that happens, they don't always share those insights with us. So a lot of us, if that happens, we don't.
It's a hush hush.
It's hush hush, right? Yeah. Unless you have and I have a lot of really close realtor friends, and we will talk about those stuff, but we don't necessarily remember all the kind of stuff when we were younger, like when we were first in the industry, things we did. Like, there's certain bonehead moves you make, right? But maybe it's a little unfortunate. Maybe we should get together, figure out those things, because I don't know. I can't say unequivocally that something comes to mind when you come to that, unfortunately.
Yeah. And lastly, do you have like a documentation process of running like a operations manual for like, okay, at least
we do. Yeah, we do.
How does that look like?
It needs a revision. We were looking through it the other day. And so Katie, the one I was telling you about, the one that's in the East Coast, that works for Royal LePage as well, top level realtor now.
Yeah.
Her processes and Kim as well, like it was sort of our assistant. Like, so we were looking through the manual because we've had a couple assistants with Elise going on mat leave, and then having Jesse here, and then Elise back. We realized we're going through the other day, and we're like, we need a total revamp because we've changed the processes so quickly. So we are in the process of now like scaling back and redoing that, because it's any process manual, which by the way, I love process. During my MBA, one of our courses I took, it was like, I did a process manual with our group. It was awesome. I loved it. We all took an aspect of it. But the one thing you got to know about a process manual is that it's a living, breathing document. It should be changed and updated. And even more recently, how things have changed with Instagram, even the postings with TikTok, how they're pushing different reels, and because they want to compete with each other, and how every time they ask, like, the document needs to change on that too. So sometimes we're changing more quickly than we can keep up with the own document. But having a process manual is you need for growth, because there's certain things that don't change when it comes to listing. Like, okay, here's the process we do. Here's when Natalie, my stager, comes in. Here's when my cleaners come in. Here's when my staging company comes in. Here's when my photographer, videographer comes in, and here's how we post, and boom, 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 boom. So those things all pretty much remain the same, but we have changed. We've made them more efficient. So the manual needs a revamp.
Manuals, and everyone needs a manual. Even there's a book called The E-Myth. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
So he essentially talks about that. Like, sometimes
there's
you need
two different. I'm reading one.
The revisited one. Revisited one, right? Talks about like even every business, McDonald's, they have a system of operation. Okay, the fry has to be fried at this level of heat. The burger has to be like this. And you got to find ways to create that manual for wherever, even if you're like an individual realtor, but setting up those systems from day one really is going to help you grow and scale and actually find the most value to give to your clients. that was a great way to wrap it up of actually documenting. And for all the entrepreneurs out there, whatever stage you're at, wherever business you're in, I hope you found value in this podcast. Think about documenting. Everything comes to systems and procedures.
But don't let the documentation slow you down.
And keep revisiting it over and over. If something you do differently today, like, let me write that down, because when someone comes in this business, they're going to have to understand step 1, 2, 3, and 4.
And before you wrap up, one good thing is when you have a good idea, most ideas happen when you're in the shower, you're in the bathroom, in the gym, write them down. Your memory is not as good as you think they are. So that even close to this business. So I always have my phone with me and I in my notes. And I said this to my cousin who has his own podcast as well. I'm like, when something comes to you, it's just tell Siri, not even you're driving, tell Siri, make a note. And you tell Siri the note and she'll put it into your phone or type it out, because you won't remember the next 5 minutes. We all have great memories, but unless you write it down, good luck with that.
Yeah. Big gems, DC, big gems. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was episode number 10 of the DC Talks podcast. Hope you got a lot of value from that. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, and also leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate the feedback. And if you want to reach out to DC himself, message him on Instagram and comment on his posts, and just interact with us and let us know what you think about the content.
Yeah, even TikTok. TikTok is not as much as it's usually the videos message on, but hey, I find Instagram has the best messaging when it comes to all the apps. I'm on all of them, but I just find Instagram is probably the best one. Or you can always email me, dcharlie@royallepage.ca.
Yeah, you're like CP24. You're everywhere. Everywhere. Anyways, guys, we'll see you next week. And all right, have a great week, everybody.
Bye.
Peace out.
Ciao.